would you say was your favorite KISS tour and why?
Well, there was highlights throughout the years, but I guess in some ways that the Hot in the Shade tour, even though that's not my favorite record, but it was a great package with Winger and Slaughter, and we kind of really mixed up the set more. It was the last one with Eric Carr, so I have a lot of fond memories of that one.
Now, speaking of Winger and Slaughter, tons of opening acts, and then at the same time, at the end of tour, lots of end-of-tour pranks. Like, I think I read Bon Jovi dropped ping pong balls on the stage. Who are your favorite opening acts and best end-of-tour prank?
Well, I guess the Bon Jovi one was a big one with the tour prank. But, I mean, I got along really well. That tour I really liked. Winger and Slaughter, they were at the top of their game, too. And Kip Winger was dating, Rachel Hunter, so that was nice. So, everybody usually, really treats the headline act with a lot of respect, so that's not a problem. But I just think that was the longest, so you got to develop a little bit of a relationship, and you don't always travel together, so it's not like I got to really. But I remember, one time actually going with Kip Winger to a strip bar in Montreal, and it's not that I'm not saying that that's painful, but it's not my favorite place to always go. But the point is, going with him, and the girls were just amazing, and they were all over us because he was Mr. Kip Winger, So it was fun.
Nice.
Do you still have any of the outfits or the instruments you used during the 80s, like maybe that nuclear suit that you had or the BK?
Very, very few of the stuff. I mean, it was when KISS did the big auction and everything. About a year after that, I realized, I don't need this stuff to look at, and I can't fit in it, and it looks kind of strange in my closet. Whatever I did have, a lot of the really outrageous stuff always was in the KISS warehouse anyway. So, but I still have some of the guitars, and I still have a few articles of clothing and jewelry, and lots of press things and promotional items. But I got rid of quite a. I had this kind of strange sounding Bruce comes out of the closet thing, which was just supposed to be just like if you want something from I don't have a warehouse of KISS stuff. I just had a closet full of some items that I just definitely didn't need anymore. So that's where that came from. And the guitars, actually, there's a hard rock. I did quite a few deals with some of the KISS guitars, with the hard rocks actually, which is nice because they really display it nicely.
Well, you mentioned the warehouse, the KISS warehouse, and everyone's, the fortress and whatnot. Is there really like a warehouse the size of an, airport hangar, airplane hangar? What is it?
There was something certainly that stored a lot of the stuff that they auctioned back in I guess that was about 5 years ago. So, but I don't know.
You never visited?
Yes, there was one facility in LA that I went to where they used to hold the gear, and I guess you can consider that a warehouse. I think they've had a few through the years, one on the East Coast as well. I'm not sure how organized they are about it, but part of that big Butterfield auction sale was to get rid of it, just get rid of it and make a lot of money.
Did that happen?
Yeah, they did.
Are you still working on Dishonorable Discharge? Is there any information about that?
Yeah, the book's really still just on hold, and I know you still gave it a title, which is fine, but I don't know what the title would be whenever I get around to it. I mean, the story keeps getting told, so that's why it's like, I really prefer working with more musical products, like the ESP DVD, CD, my next solo record, BK3, things like that. So that's why it's not a high priority, right now, but I'm hoping at one point I'll recognize it's a good time to get done. And the guy that I'm working with, he's very, very busy in his career because he's actually in the industry with a label, and he's just full-time, full tilt, so it's very hard.
Cool. Now, you did mention BK3. I've got a question, or actually a couple, from Donovan from Belgium. Yeah, he wants to know, with the BK3 CD coming out, are you going to tour behind it? Because someone else also wanted to know, you tour a lot, in Australia, Europe, but rarely in the States. Would you tour in the States?
It's hard. I probably would more likely do performances in the States along with a KISS Expo. Because to be quite honest, there's more of a demand that I can make it happen by going to Sweden, Australia, and Japan and things like that, and possibly do a band thing. Okay. In America, it's just really, it doesn't make sense. It would cost so much money. I couldn't afford to do it. Cost someone else too much money. I don't want to to lose money doing it. But at these expo things, that would be the way to do that. So, I definitely plan on trying to get out there once that's ready. But for right now, I've been focusing a little more on the when it comes to the live gigs, like me and Eric playing together, because it's cool to do that.
Yeah.
You guys taking off?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go over there.
We're going to go, what time is it?
Come back at 12:30, but call me first and say, like, okay, I think it's a good time now. Right? Okay?
Yeah, we'll
So give me a call a little after 12, let me know how it's all
get
going.
them warmed up.
Right. All right, thanks, guys.
You let us know when you want to.
Yeah. Well, let's just do like another 10 minutes. I'm sure you got 400 questions.
What are some of the favorite guitar solos that you have written, or say a couple guitar solos that really influenced you and how you play?
Well, I mean, some of my favorite stuff is like the Tears Are Falling solo, Forever, Things in Unholy, or Things from Revenge. But, I was always very influenced by, Jeff Beck and Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton and all the British guitarists, and there was always riffs that popped in my head that I never can forget, so I've just absorbed all those things through the years, Eddie Van Halen, so you just kind of make it your own, so hopefully I've done that with these KISS songs when I needed to.
What do you think of the Van Halen reunion?
Well, I'm a friend of Michael Anthony, so I think that's kind of crazy, and
Silly.
I don't get it, I think it's kind of strange.
He sang backup. I mean, he's the high part on all those songs.
Yeah, it's sad, and I don't know. I don't think it's really going to function or something. Something will explode.
Now, when you auditioned for KISS, did they say, play these 5 songs with us, or did you just come in and go crazy and they said, that's our guy, or how did it all come about?
Well, the real time when I actually got to be in the band kind of was more the 80. I did a session for Animalize, and Paul knew that I was Bob's brother. My brother, of course, Bob was, very, very close to those guys, and he just kind of cryptically said, Paul, don't cut your hair, it was around shoulder length then, because I wasn't aware that Mark was sick and there could be a problem and all that, so I didn't have to audition in that class, typical way at that time, no.
Were you ever involved in the work KISS did with Vinnie Vincent, either on maybe Creatures of the Night sessions or the Revenge sessions?
Creatures, no, I wasn't around then, though I was kind of aware that they were working, but Revenge, he obviously was able to convince Gene and Paul to want to write some songs, and Vinny's a good songwriter. So one time I saw him up at Gene's quickly, and one time I think he might have popped by to say hi to them to the studio, but then I didn't hear much because he pissed them off, and then that was the end of that again. So Vinny's a very eclectic person, so who knows what was going on.
Yeah. Now, it's common knowledge, Alive 1 was reworked in the studio quite a bit. Alive 2, with Alive 3, you guys were on top of it. The music was never better. Was there a lot of work done in the studio on Alive 3, honestly?
Not a lot, but we did have to do a few things, I know that some of the stuff wasn't recorded. I mean, Eddie Kramer is, of course, famous for, KISS and the Hendrix things, but the live thing, there was a few things that weren't recorded right, so we did have to fix a few things, but I wasn't around for Alive 1 and 2 to know how much surgery there was, so, but my guess would be there would have been less on Alive 3 than the other two.
Patrick from the detention hall message board wants to know if you could tell the story about when you did that solo and then you went over and picked up Gene's axe bass and kept soloing. Could you tell us that story?
Right. Well, what happened was, my solo was pretty much, as much as it seemed really improvised, it did have an ending, and then when I got to the ending, and Gene and Paul were nowhere to be found, kind of maybe in the wings or whatever, I kind of freaked out, and I thought it was a bad joke, and then the next thing I know, when they finally came out, I was kind of out of steam. It's like I didn't want to play anymore, So I just was kind of angry. I didn't know what to do, so I just grabbed Gene's bass, and it was just kind of like this crazy, oh yeah, I'll take your bass. You know what I mean? It was kind of crazy, but I'm glad someone sent me a picture of me holding the bass. It looked pretty funny, and I guess since it was something out of the norm for my personality, for them, they liked it. You know what I mean? They thought it was interesting, so. No harm done, but it was pretty crazy.
All right, this is a 3-part question. KISS from, we'll say, Asylum all the way through to Psycho Circus, it seemed like every album changed pretty drastically in sound. You know, Crazy Nights was pretty polished, Hits was, you know, kind of rough, Revenge was raw. What do you think about the musical direction of KISS all the way through, even including Carnival of Souls? And then the last part of this question is, Carnival of Souls sessions, were they recorded video-wise? And if so, do you ever see that coming out?
I don't remember us ever filming much for Carnival of Souls at all. I really don't think there's anything that I remember seeing someone with a camera, you know. Tommy Thayer might have something because he was hanging around a bit then. But regarding the albums and the evolution of the sound, I mean, that's, you know, it's common, I think, for a band over a long span of time that each album is very different. And I'll use this analogy loosely because I'm such a Beatle fan. But you know, you see the way the Beatles also. You know, I'm not trying to compare KISS with the Beatles. I'm just saying here that's the best band of all time. And you'll love a primitive early album or a very complicated studio record of theirs. You know, and with KISS, it depended on who they worked with, just what kind of commitment they wanted to make to what it should be sonically and everything. So that's why each record, for many bands, especially over a long span of time, changes. There's other groups that are more consistent because they seem to have their formula and they know how it works. Yeah, well, yeah. But you know, I mean, even Who records, you know, pretty much sounded, even though they might experiment with different things. Rolling Stones changed through the years too a bit, but then once they got that Stone sound, that's what most of the records sound like. But KISS definitely had a different, depending on the producer also. That was the other important point.
Just had a couple Eric Carr questions. The Hot in the Shade tour, Eric was not talking Gene and Paul at the beginning. When did he kind of start, and did the tension ease at all through the tour after they started talking? And do you have a favorite Eric Carr memory?
Well, Eric was just, you know, very, very funny guy. He was very strange. Breakfast might be a Hershey's candy bar, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, it's shock your system a little, maybe. But yeah, Eric had, you know, it's interesting how he used to, in some ways, you know, just fight these battles in his mind, and then you know, working with people like Gene and Paul, you know, there's a way to do it right and to make it the best you can, and there's a way to, when you want to fight it, you know, it kind of seems like a lot of energy going the wrong way, you know, but that was always his personality. You know, if he felt like, you know, uncomfortable about something, he would sometimes, you know, all right, I'm not talking to you. You know what I mean? It's kind of strange, of course, but it did ease up. I mean, I think they finally had a talk. Paul was like really clear with him, like, you know, come on, this is ridiculous, because you know how many other people would want to be in the band. You know, I mean, if you can't make this something that you enjoy, you know, then you know, wake up already. You know, come on, you know, because truly, you know, you're not going to instantly change the people who create a band because of your needs, you know. So one, you know, I used to be able to, you know, just play the game. So he was upset with me sometimes too, because what I mean by the game is we all have times in our jobs and our other parts of our lives where we have to, you know, not necessarily, you know, try to be. I don't want to, you know, I'm not putting down Eric by saying immature, but you know what I'm saying. You know, you just have to bite the nail, kind of, and just deal with it. Okay, this is the way it's going to be, and this is what you got to do. You know, you can't fight that. So you can't fight the airlines, you can't fight the government. You know, and your bosses sometimes you can't fight really. You have to just like deal with it. But once they talked, things got a little better then.
Well, Mike Shoup from St. James, Minnesota, he wants you to come to Minnesota, first of all. But also, he wants to know, while you were in KISS, did you have the freedom to freelance, you know, work with other artists, such as, you know, Eric Singer does it quite a bit now, and he's still a member of KISS. You know, how was it when you were in KISS?
Well, you know, back then I did have a, you know, contract with the band, and I was paid if I worked or I didn't work. And to be honest, you know, it was a big job, and when there were times that I didn't have anything to do, I wasn't trying to look, meaning for the band, I didn't have any responsibilities. I wasn't trying to look for other work, you know. It wasn't like I could, you know, I didn't really actively look for anything, you know. Like Eric's situation now, KISS is not that busy.
Yeah.
And it's not that, you know, you can't just sit around and wait for the phone to ring, you know. So he's busy doing what he, you know. The same thing for me. I'm with Grand Funk, but I want to be able to do it all if I can, you know, because that's our careers, you know, is to get out there and get people to hear you and be known. So, but it was fine. I didn't mind that back then. I'm certainly different now, but for different reasons, you know.